Welcome to Bold Thinking, entrepreneurial stories honestly told. In a world full of chaos, this is a podcast about the people making positive change in the world, using bold thinking to transform business and themselves. Today, I'm speaking to Cemal Ezel, founder of the Change Please, Old Spike Rosary and Coal Rooms restaurants. Cemal may be best known for Change Please, a social enterprise that trains people who are homeless to be baristas, paying each person a living wage, providing housing and support for them in further employment. Change Please was listed by the Marketing Week as one of the 100 most disruptive brands for 2017, and Cemal won UK Entrepreneurial of the Year for 2017. Change Please also represented the UK in the Chivas Venture Finals to win the World's Best Social Enterprise 2018. I've known Cemal for several years now, and on his help, Change Please design and create the strategy for the bus that would travel around the country supplying services and support to people who are homeless. And I have to tell you, he's an absolutely fascinating person to know, and I 100% admiration for this man. So first off, how are you doing today?
I'm really good, thank you. It's important to state that we're still here, we're still alive, still going, still optimistic about the future, and a little bit sad about Captain Sir Tom Moore yesterday. Which is pretty sad news. But yeah, apart from that, excited about what 2021 and future holds.
So tell us a bit about the charity and how you came to the world of this sort of social enterprise.
So we've got two elements of what we do. Is one's a charitable arm and one's a social enterprise. And from my perspective, it's really one of the key ways that we're going to solve some of the world problems through developing more social businesses, more social enterprises. If companies can look at what products they use through their supply chain and how they support up and coming businesses, and if those products that they're already purchasing then start to do good at the same time, and it doesn't cost that company anymore and the quality is still there, then I really think that social enterprise generally is going to be a key factor of how we make a difference in the world that we live in. And I kind of really believed in that model so much that I got on to set up kind of 5-6 social businesses in the last 6 years. And it just really inspires me to see that this is the way that we can think differently to kind of achieve change in our world. And yeah, I used to work in the city. I had a bit of a midlife crisis when I was, actually, it's not a midlife crisis if I was 29. That means I'll be dying when I'm 60. But a third of my life crisis, hopefully. And yeah, I had this kind of inspiration to set up Change Please whilst I was in Vietnam in 2013, so 7-8 years ago.
Wow, it's amazing. So, how do the profits sort of go back to, to help specifically around sort of Change Please, the sort of homeless? How do they sort of feed back in? It's almost like cyclical, isn't it, the way it helps?
Absolutely. So we generate income from selling coffee to corporates, to places like airlines, train networks, a range of B2B companies, Lloyds Bank, for example, and Virgin Atlantic's trains, gym networks. And that traditional sale generates profit. That profit is then reinvested back in to our impact. And the impact happens through supporting people who are homeless into employment with us by paying them a living wage, which is now £23,000 in London per year. We provide housing in 10 days. So we're the only organisation in Europe that offers both a living wage job and housing to people that are homeless. So that to give somebody a home after 10 days of starting their employment is a pretty life-changing opportunity. We then provide bank accounts, and probably the most important part of what we offer is therapy support. So, whether that person's been a military veteran, a victim of domestic abuse or sexual abuse, or gone for a bereavement or a divorce, or one of the many, many, many reasons why somebody's life becomes so bad that they have to or forced to become homeless. If you're at the beginning of this journey, 6-7 years ago, I thought, let's give people a job and a house. And well, actually, it wasn't even a house. It was a job first. And then we realized that we can also do the housing part. And I thought that would be enough. And then we started to see kind of 2 or 3 months later that honeymoon period, that exciting part of their life being changed, was actually just temporary. And that person was still suffering from the demons, the fears, the loneliness, the depression, the anxiety, the OCD, all of those kind of mental health challenges that were perpetuated or were started by, or caused that person to become homeless, but then perpetuated through them being institutionalized, rough sleeping, etc., etc. And if we didn't break that cycle of first and foremost tackling the mental health areas, then and really working with that person, then no matter how much you pay someone in a job or how quickly you give somebody housing, it just will go back into a negative spiral. And that's why the mental health area is so important. And I can speak for hours on this. I mean, actually, a perfect example is during during COVID this year, when we were doing some work for the NHS and the Nightingales. We were donating the services, but then the main reason that we did it was obviously because we wanted to help the NHS, but more so it was a lot of our staff who were in the current cohort, 36 people at the time. They went from having a community of people that they worked alongside to standing behind a coffee machine where they were in a safe space where customers would come to them. So rather than them begging on the streets and people are asking people for money, people would come to them and ask them for a cappuccino or a latte. So they felt like they had self-worth, a place back in society. They were giving back something to somebody else just by giving them a coffee, but behind a safe space. So all of those social structures, all of that community integration during COVID was just wiped away. And then we saw our staff, going back to a hostel or to the homes that we provided, and they were lonely and they were sad. So they still had a job, they were still being paid, they were in a home, but they were sad and they were as a negative space they would have ever been. So it just really goes to show that from our perspective, we really put a lot behind the mental health support, and that's where a lot of our profits go to pay for counsellors, clinical psychologists, occupational therapists, which is actually surprisingly super important. I never realised how important it was. And that is a really big part of the whole model of what we offer. And then the final piece of the puzzle is the onward employment. So where we work with big contract caterers, we will then exit our staff into contract catering sites to work with, to employ our staff longer term. And the reason that's important is because if we don't provide that onward employment, then we end up getting a bottleneck of where we can't bring in new staff because we've got too many people in current employment positions. So we need to exit people out so that we can create new opportunities for people to come in, basically. So that was a very long answer to your very simple question.
I totally love it. And how many countries does Change Please operate in? I know that you had aspirations for expanding the globally. Where actually are you currently based at the moment?
So UK, Scotland, Ireland, Republic of Ireland. We opened in France alongside UNICEF, in Belgium alongside Oxfam. In Australia, we opened in 2019 in Perth, and then now we've expanded into Sydney. And this year, we've got a super big focus on the US market in partnership with a huge contract caterer there. And we're looking at sites in the Met Museum, MoMA Museum to replace the current coffee supplies there, but places like Bank of America, etc. And especially in the US, the problem of homelessness is so bad, and there isn't a safety net like we have in the UK. There aren't a huge amount of outreach centres and charities, and when you hit that destitute point, the speed of escalation to go into a negative spiral is unbelievable in the US. It really, really is. In the UK, there are a lot more safety nets to kind of catch people and it's really people who are in a bad way that you end up being rough sleepers. But in the US, it's a different story completely. So this year is a huge focus for us in the US, and one of our team members are moving up to Charlotte to set up the US office over there later this year.
Wow, it's amazing. I mean, I think one of the stories you told me a couple of years ago that always stuck in my mind was around somebody that was a really successful chef, had a great job, and came down to London for a new job, and I think his wife and his child got killed in a car accident, and then really quickly spiraled out into a homeless situation. And it's absolutely heartbreaking. These are just things beyond your control, aren't they?
Absolutely. So the middle part of that story was that, so you're absolutely right, came to the UK's family. He was an amazing chef, had his job. He lost his wife and his daughter, as you mentioned, in 2008. And he became homeless, rough sleeping in a new country. The key part is also that in 2010, whilst he was homeless, he was walking past Blackfriars Bridge. Did I tell you this, Julia?
No, keep telling it. I love it. Yeah.
So he was walking past Blackfriars Bridge, and it was a freezing cold night, icy waters in the Thames. Anyone who's listening to this, type the name Adan Abo Baker, or just type in homeless man. Actually, don't type it in until I tell you the story, because I was ruin it. So he was walking past the Thames, and then he heard a scream from behind him, and he saw a lady called Amy jumping into the Thames. She was trying to commit suicide at the time in 2010. And while it was a freezing cold night. Picture yourself, London, icy waters. The Blackfriars Bridge was full of people. They were looking over. People had their phones out calling 999, not knowing what to do, how to help. This guy who had lost everything himself was at rock bottom, didn't know where he was even going to sleep that night, ran to the middle of the Thames, Blackfriars Bridge, looked over, saw her, took off his clothes, jumped into the Thames after her, into icy waters, when everyone else was just on their phone trying to call an ambulance. He ended up saving her life. He caught hypothermia. Someone stole his clothes. Now you can Google homeless man saves woman from drowning. And as a consequence of that, in 2012, he won the George Award for bravery from the Queen, which is, as we all know, is the highest civilian award you can get. That's only given to people that have saved people on a battlefield, who are really kind of like the best of the best for our society and the world, the country that we live in. And then he also won the High Commendation, which hadn't been given to anybody in 43 years, and they gave it to him.
Wow.
And that was in 2012. He went to Buckingham Palace. He was given those awards. Prince Charles gave him the award, another award. He was just like, at the time, super highly regarded, made every major national, international news story you can imagine. So that was 2012, 2013, 14, 15, 16, 17. He said to me that as soon as all that press died down and people forgot about him, for those 5 years afterwards, he went back to the streets and people just saw him in the same way that they would see anyone else that was homeless, as being potentially a drug addict or having mental health issues or unhelpable, and it's someone else's problem. And the truth of the story was that he is literally a national hero.
Yeah, amazing.
And people would just see him the same. I mean, I'd say as much as someone like, it's quite controversial, like as much as Sir Tom, he lost everything and he jumped into the Thames to save somebody, and when he was destitute, and he went back to the streets, and he said that, people just saw him in exactly the same way. And then he came and found us, and we gave him a job. And we could not find anybody on the open market as a barista who was as good as him, because he has the skills as a chef to be able to taste acidity, bitterness, sweetness, the key characteristics that you look for in coffee. He could taste that naturally. And for someone like him to be homeless in the world's fifth biggest economy is just a travesty and wasted to society. So he came and found us, and we gave him a job, and then Comic Relief and BBC did a film about him for Comic Relief on Saturday Kitchen, and then that got some great new press, and then he ended up getting a new job, and then he moved on from us, which was great. But it's just what we're looking for, Julia, is to look at homelessness in a completely different way. And to look at it differently to how any other governments are looking at it around the world. And it's not a housing first model, which is what nearly all governments or NGOs focus on homelessness. We focus on a job first model, to give people the self-belief, the dignity, the self-worth to lift themselves out of homelessness and not be reliant on somebody else. And Adan is a true representation of that. He constitutes for us the 44% of homeless people that we feel want to work and can work, as opposed to the 56% of people who probably some don't want to work, or some do, but they aren't able to. We focus on the 44%, of which Adan is and was, and to stop them from becoming the 56% who aren't able to. And that's really our key mission.
Yeah, it's an amazing story. I know there's so many answers you've got to this question for the many years I've known you, but what do you think bold thinking means to you, and what do you think one of the boldest things you've done?
I think I do enjoy problem solving. It's a really weird situation, and it's the obvious answer to that question is kind of thinking outside the box, but it's trying to think of innovative solutions that kind of disrupt the status quo and get people to look outside the box to find innovative solutions. And I think that's something that I've really learned when we first set up Change Please, or Old Spike Grocery, which is where I am today. The amount of people that said to me, if and I was a commodity broker in the city, and I had a good job. I was earning good money, much more than I've earned in the 5 years combined. But so people were saying to me, "Why are you leaving your job? It's crazy." If somebody's not, if the idea was good enough, and somebody would have already done it, and that is such a dangerous way of thinking. It traps people into fitting within a box and within that status quo. And from my perspective, I just had to say to myself, we really believe in this way of doing it, no matter whether or not someone's done it or not in the past. This is going to work, and this is going to be a viable option. And for me, it was that I think a lot of people can have bold thinking and can have the ideas to do something, but the hardest part is that bravery and the confidence to actually go and deliver on that bold thought or that innovation. And that's probably the hardest part. And I think so many things in our society trap people from not being able to deliver on that bold thought or that bit of innovation to try and make the world a better place, or to have a more innovative product, in whatever they're doing. And I think a lot of those things are financially related. A lot of those things, I think, connected to self-confidence and self-belief and self-worth and so on and so forth. And I think if people are not as much trapped in that kind of debt spiral that we all are forced into, and they're a bit freer, then I think a lot more people will then actually start delivering on those bold thoughts that they that all people, I think, have.
I remember meeting you several years ago now, and I think one of your ideas you had was about opening the warehouse. So I want to ask you a bit about that, and also about having getting this Change Please bus that drives around, which I want to talk to you about. But I think the main thing I really, really admire and absolutely, totally, 100% respect you over is you let nothing stand in your way. And I've heard people say to you, and I've been in the room when they say, it's not going to work, and that's too ambitious, we've done that before, and you've got all these problems, but you literally have just waded through and just gone for it. So I'd love you to talk about the bus and the warehouse you're sitting in now, and the benefits that's brought, because you've absolutely brought something to life. It's incredibly bold, regardless of anything that's been said to you.
Yeah, so where we are at the moment is a 3,500 square foot training academy, which is a place where we roast our coffee. We train our homeless staff to have the skills and the tools to be baristas. This is where we provide all the mental health support, the counselling, therapy, etc. And it's the world's first charity SCA campus, which is a kind of the highest level of coffee training that you can get through the Specialty Coffee Association. So it's and it's a cafe as well, which is which makes it helps it to be sustainable, which is being really great to help consolidate all of the impact that we have. And when somebody comes off the street, they can come here, they can have a safe sanctuary and learn new skills, and then have a place where they feel safe, and then they can move out into employment from here. The bus project is something that I've wanted to do for the last 2 or 3 years, and it's as a result of if you look at homelessness on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being people who are the least vulnerable and 10 being the most vulnerable, we are really good at supporting people who are between 1 and 7. So that's 80% of our beneficiaries are 1 to 7 and 20% at 7 to 10. So we wanted to do more for rough sleepers who we also see are in the 7, 8, 9, 10s bracket. So people who do have more in-depth mental health issues that aren't ready to work, but do need support, do need life-saving support as well. And what we're launching is 5 buses, which will be going in London to provide things like showers, haircuts, clothes washing, spare clothes. There's a doctor's area on the bus as well, so they'll be able to remotely tap into a doctor. And the amount of all these things that I'm saying, Julie, I can think of each one ticking off where you've helped us with relationships and connections and ideas, even from the the initial designs that we used to get some of the sponsorship right from the beginning. I told you a crazy idea that we had, and you were like, "Yeah, let's help you, let's do it." And actually, that helps it come to life, and that comes back to that point around confidence that I mentioned. When you start seeing it and believing it and touching it and feeling it, I really believe in visualization and using that as a kind of self-confidence tool. And that really, what you gave us was all that ability to tap into the right networks. And anyway, yeah. So the clothing part, which was another part that you connected us into the right groups for his charity, and also a dentist part on the top deck as well, which is a challenge with dentistry for homeless people, is that 40% of all homeless people have complained about pain in their mouth, but 15% of homeless people have tried to pull out their own teeth out of sheer pain. Wow. So we've got a dentist part of the bus that will be supporting those individuals because dental health directly impacts cardiovascular issues and cognitive issues, and also affects that person's kind of confidence, and also haircuts. So the idea is that when we're meeting people and giving them a service, it's for the 2 or 3 hours that they're with us, it's a bit of a transformational service which allows them to kind of leave the bus looking and feeling completely different. Yeah. And it's that they've now got something to lose again. Yeah. If that makes sense.
Yeah, totally.
And a lot of the people that we speak to who are rough sleepers say that they are too embarrassed to look at the reflection of themselves in a shop window when they're walking past a shop, which they must do hundreds of times a day. And to be able to give them that kind of before and after picture of having a shower and a haircut and a new set of clothes, is for us that first step of them rethinking that they are worth something again. Yeah. And that they, and for us, what's powerful about that bus is it means that we can filter people who might be in that 56% that I mentioned earlier, to see whether or not they might be suitable for, or we might put prejudice or a stigma on them, and they might be suitable for our traditional model that we have. Yeah. So we're launching 5 in London, 2 in Manchester. We're speaking to a partner about doing it in New York as well. And it's just a model that can really go anywhere to provide direct services to rough sleepers. And it's completely charitable. We don't make any money out of it at all, as we don't with the coffee. But really, it's coffee, we're selling something. But this is just about using the profits that we've got and with partnerships to kind of make something sustainable and tackle homelessness in a completely different way, really.
Did you manage to set up the doctor's sort of surgery thing? Because, that seems so critical at the moment with COVID and the pandemic.
Yeah, so I put a post on LinkedIn, which you saw, and then you sent about 2 or 3 people my way. It was more than that. And then my original plan was just to have a doctor service, which was a virtual, a remote doctor, where we would tap into an existing NHS service. The problem with that is when you tap into those services, they have a 2 or 3 hour waiting period until you can actually get that appointment. So we thought, rather than that person sitting around for 2 or 3 hours waiting for that appointment, we would create our own GP service, which meant upstairs where I am at the moment, we would have a doctor that we employ and register with the NHS, and then that homeless person will have will have us as their GP, and instead of and what they will do is we'll give them a phone number that they can just send a text message to, and then say, look, you're my GP. I'd like to see a doctor. I've got a really bad problem, and then they don't have to travel the length of London or try and register with a doctor without any address and go through all of that paperwork. But they just send us one text, and the next day or the same day we will send one of the buses straight to where they are. Wow. And then they'll sit in front of the screen and speak to a doctor,
that's amazing.
Which is their GP service. So we started to notice a few challenges around that model. A few people did tell me that's, if that's such a good idea, why haven't people done it? And this one might be a case where they're right. Is that the NHS only give out certain contracts to make it a sustainable model. So either we'll have to pay for a doctor full time, or one of the other relationships that you've contacted me with might give us a better solution when I have the calls with them later next week.
She's brilliant. She's amazing. So what do you think it's going to take for Change Please to thrive? Obviously at the moment, it's really difficult at the moment with the pandemic. What do you need and what's going to take to help you to thrive? And how can people help you?
I think the first thing is about changing perceptions around social business and homelessness generally. A lot of the issues around homelessness is that as soon as you say the word, it invokes an image in your head, and it invokes a feeling of, not much I can do about this. I haven't got a spare room. I can't answer the problem. And then it's almost somebody else's problem, apart from just donating to a charity. So what I would ask people is, when you see a homeless person, at least at the very minimum, a smile, eye contact is something that it might not be much to us, but it just makes that first person feel a little bit more human and a bit more noticed. And thinking about that person on a humane perspective as being a brother, a sister, a mother, and what made them become homeless in the first place. So that perception of homelessness, I think, is so important for us to kind of analyse where that's come from and where we've picked that up from. And then the other part from a social enterprise perspective is we are always tarred with the brush that we focus a lot of our time on the homelessness element and not on the quality of our product. And the first thing, and I won't mention names of any of the companies that we work with, but one of the CEOs of the company that we work with, when we signed the contract, and we've been through 6 months of negotiations, arguing over pennies, and we signed the contract. First thing they said to me was, does it taste good? And that prejudice is something that we as social enterprises come up day in, day out. And we can do all things. You can be price competitive, have a high quality product, be easy to purchase, and do social impact or environmental impact at the same time. It doesn't have to be one or the other. And that's a big challenge that we have to overcome if we want to make the world a better place, to give social enterprises a chance to do good. There doesn't have to be a compromise, and I think we're proving that. And actually, as a result of me always hitting that problem head on, or being faced with that problem, we set up a social enterprise during the start of the pandemic last year, called Serious Tissues. I don't know if I told you about this, Julia. So it's serioustissues.com. Again, it's a social enterprise, which is basically every day, just for toilet paper, we flush down the toilet 27,000 trees. Wow. For toilet paper. Wow. That's crazy. So there isn't a huge amount you can do to stop that, unless you're if you're planting new trees, you're changing the product to something else. So there are alternatives like bamboo or bagasse, or there's a manure-based product that strips out. But the problem with those is they're all made in China, and they're being shipped from around the world to come to our toilets in the UK, and they're just really unenvironmentally friendly from a shipping perspective. But they are an alternative to trees. But so what we've launched is a product that is made in the UK. It's 100% from recycled paper. It plants a tree for every one roll that somebody buys. So it replenishes the trees by a factor of, I have no idea, but by a big factor to replant trees that are being chopped down for toilet roll use. And there's no bleachers, there's no dyes. We've just done a baby wipe option, which is 100% vegan. It's biodegradable. You can flush it down the loo. It's just insane. And it's just, again, going back to that, how can we do these things differently? How can we solve some of these problems in a different way? And if you're a corporate that's buying toilet roll already, as long as we can match the price, the quality, and it's easy to buy, why not buy one that plants a tree for every roll a corporate buys, or a consumer buys? And that it's those kind of reasons why, and that's why we set up Serious Tissues, because for coffee, there's a bit of a value element to it. But with toilet roll, most people don't know what their toilet roll actually is. We all see soft in supermarkets and stuff, but soft basically means it's made out of virgin pulp, which means it's cutting down trees. Yeah. So it's about re-educating consumers that it doesn't have to be white. It can be grey. It can be a little bit coarser, but there's a reason for that. And the reason for that is we want to live in a better world. So it's trying to think outside the box a little bit and educate consumers and change the perceptions of what we're used to doing. I think that's what, to answer your question, that's what consumers can do. And
well, I have to say, the first time I ever met Change Please, a little coffee cart outside a London Bridge tube station, and I went and I chatted to the guy and I had the most amazing cup of coffee, and then went back and spoke to Paula at Lloyd's, and I said, wow, this is just amazing. So I have to say, they have the best tasting coffee ever. I'm with you. I'm a massive fan of it. Anyway, thanks for chatting today and joining us. Absolutely love talking to you. I could literally be here all year. We'll talk about the George Clooney story next time when you went to Mecca Island and met Richard Branson, because that's an amazing one.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Jude. I really appreciate the time.
So thank you for listening to Bold Thinking, Entrepreneurial Stories Honestly Told. If you'd like to share your comments on LinkedIn, Twitter or Instagram, follow, please get in contact or contact us at hello@thehonestbrand.com. And if you'd like to make any contributions whatsoever, please go onto the Change Please website. Look at what the team over there is doing. It's absolutely amazing. So please join me next time to hear from someone else who's making a positive change in the world. Thank you so much. Absolutely love this story. All right. Thanks so much for your time. And have a great day. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.